Negar Mortazavi joins us from Washington. Negar, thanks so much for joining us here at TRT
Thanks
World. I know it's really late over there. Now, why are we seeing this move from the US now in the middle of pandemic again?
Well, as critics have called it, basically part of the cruelty of the sanctions. But I think the strategy maybe of the administration, or at least some of the more hawkish people around President Trump, like Mike Pompeo and others, is to try to push Iran to the edge to basically, as they say, change the behavior of the regime or bring them back to the negotiating table by squeezing the Iranian economy even further. And as you just said, cutting them off basically mostly from the global financial market. But I think in the middle of the pandemic, and we know that sanctions have had an impact on Iran's fight against the pandemic, I also see this as very cruel and not really achieving the goals that the administration has stated either.
Right, and exactly what kind of effect this will have on Iran sanctioning these 18 major banks?
Well, it will basically cut very of the existing ties to the financial market. It will impact major parts of the economy, but it might have consequences on even humanitarian items. It's been mentioned food and medicine and medical supplies, even though the US government, the Trump administration officials are saying that sanctions, basically these items, these humanitarian items are exempt from sanctions. And that's what we know exists on paper. But in reality, in practice, it's not happening. The exemptions for the humanitarian items hasn't been enough, and the financial sanctions are the reason that impact humanitarian trade with Iran. And this is just going to squeeze it further, and it's the Iranian people who will pay the price for it.
Right, and let's not forget that most UN Security Council members oppose this bid for Iran sanctions, but seems like the US will continue to act unilaterally. What's the legal justification of all this?
Well, it's unilateral, as you said, and it's President Trump or the U.S. Government who pulled out of the nuclear deal, while the other side, the Iranians, were abiding by the nuclear deal. So the strategy, I think the strategy here is very important, and this is something that was supported by U.S.'s allies, as you said, in the Security Council, was to stick to the nuclear deal and then build on more negotiations and potentially more deals. What President Trump did instead, he pulled out of that deal. That deal is almost unraveled. It's on life support, as Europeans are calling it. And there's no alternative for it. There's no better nuclear deal, as President Trump had promised. Iran's behavior in the region hasn't really changed much. And what we're seeing happen is just the economy being squeezed furthermore, and the Iranian people taking the pressure from basically this political fight between the two governments.
Okay, Negar, exactly. Everything will, I mean, all this will end up for Iranian people to suffer even more. Thanks so much for that. Negar Mortazavi, live for us from Washington, D.C.